for this 14th National Competitiveness Forum is boosting private sector investments in agro-industry to take advantage of regional opportunities. This forum will be take place for the entire day, and we will have several sessions that will be looking at various parts of our conversation on the agro-industry and how we can take advantage of our regional opportunities. The panels that will be handled by the expert moderators, Dr. Madina and Dr. Muhumuza, will be looking at enhancing investment opportunities in the agro-industry for youth, women, and lessons from the cotton value chains. We will also look at the opportunities in the agro-industry and picking lessons from fish and aquaculture value chain. We'll also look at unlocking alternative financing opportunities to boost private investments in agro-industry. And then finally, later this afternoon, implications of these conversations we're having on the budgetary process. So on behalf of the ministry, I want to welcome all of you, and we are looking forward to quite an insightful conversation this morning, and the various to be able to share their testimonies. I am excited because this particular session and forum has brought the real players, especially players in the agro-industry space. So I want in a very special way to request all the players invited here. I can see the players, for example, in the Papa, Texford, Nasari, and Uganda Ginas and cotton exporters. Please stand for recognition. We need to appreciate you and what you're doing in that sector. That's our first category of testimonies we will have on both sides. Thank you very much. The next team, the team from Katosi Women Group, Interfish Farm, Yalelo Fish Company, and UFPA, that's the Association of the Fish and stand for recognition. We want to recognize you and also thank you very much for joining us this morning. Our next category is when we look at the financing and agribusiness, the teams from Credit Bureau, Market Systems, the CEO USE, OSH Advocates, PAL Capital Partners, and the head of the African Queen. Are we here? Can we stand for recognition? I know they will be speaking in the afternoon, so some may not be joining us already, but I see we have one of our participants. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And finally, later this afternoon, of course, we will listen to the ministry as they put together, and NPA, as they put together our direction, our policy and budgetary processes through the conversation this morning. I want to now take the pleasure of inviting development policy and research to come and make welcome remarks. You're most welcome, Joseph. Another round of applause.
Thank you. So Finance, Planning and Economic Development, here represented by the Deputy Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Patrick Ochailap, Your Excellency, the U.S. Ambassador to Uganda, William Pope, and your team, the private sector representatives in the room, our presenters and discussants who are here for the morning session, members of the academia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I welcome you at the 14th National Competitiveness Forum. Today's event is happening during the first year of implementing the second National Strategy for Private Sector Development, which provides for a coordination and consolidation framework for private sector development interventions across the country. The framework also provides for structured private sector engagement, providing for opportunities for government to engage private sector players on policy and budgetary processes at both national and subnational level. This year's National Competitiveness Forum is running under the theme Boosting Private Sector Investments in Agro-Industry in order to take advantage of the regional opportunities. This is in line with the financial year 2024-2025 budget strategy, which is focusing on unlocking growth opportunities in selected value chains. This meeting, therefore, is expected to enable us share lessons on how we can unlock the cotton, textile, and apparel sector and the fish and aquaculture value chains. We aim to identify industry product spaces as well as explore all possible investment opportunities for the private sector to support the government's drive to grow the economy tenfold. The discussions will further provide input into the budget for financial year 2024-2025. Ladies and gentlemen, agro-industry, which is our focus this year, is a key sector for economic growth, for food security, and for poverty reduction. To achieve our objectives today, we need to address issues such as, one, why most chains, value chains, are not fully developed and less attractive to private sector investment. What potential subsectors and investment opportunities should be profiled for investment, for investors to consider? What are the key drivers and barriers of productivity and growth? And what are the best strategies to promote agro-industry investments in a changing regional landscape? It is therefore a challenge for each one of us in the room to identify and agree on key priorities and actions for advancing private sector investment in agro-industry, as well as potential product spaces for private sector investment in the selected commodities, which I have highlighted above. I am also cognizant of the challenges we face in this journey, including low productivity, limited access to markets, and the high cost of finance that affect the players in these sectors. These challenges require coordinated and collaborative responses from all stakeholders, including government, businesses, civil society, and international public sector institutions, as well as those in the private sector space. Ladies and gentlemen, the 13th National Competitiveness Forum identified areas for interventions, and I'm pleased to give you a progress update on implementation of what we identified. Allow me to share the progress of implementation of these interventions as follows. One, the private sector, when we gathered in a similar forum last year, tasked us to reduce the cost of doing business by eliminating impediments in our laws, regulations, and administrative procedures, and thereby incentivize formalization. To this end, a high-level business licensing reform committee was constituted by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and is in advanced stages of finalizing its report to the Cabinet Subcommittee on licensing reforms. Secondly, the Minister was tasked to facilitate the strengthening of the internal capacities of small and medium enterprises by simplifying accounting processes and record keeping. Under this, the Ministry is fast-tracking the implementation of informality management for compliance and revenue mobilization interventions to boost internal capacities of SMEs to comply with standards and exporting requirements. Furthermore, Enterprise Uganda is fast-tracking the implementation of the National Business Development Services Framework that was launched in October 2022. These interventions will be pivotal in responding to that quest. Thirdly, the Ministry was tasked to facilitate Uganda National Bureau of Standards in enhancing compliance with standards to ease access to markets. Government supported UNBS to operationalize the Mbarara Regional Laboratory in June 2023 in order to enhance access to testing services in addition to the regional laboratories in Gulu and Kampala. Fourth, the Ministry was tasked to liberalize the pension and retirement benefits sector as a strategy to reduce the cost of finance and increase the availability of domestic funds for private sector investments. The National Social Security Fund started the implementation of the NSSF Amendment Act that commenced on 7th January 2022. Section 4 and 13A of the said Act introduced 1. Mandatory contributions by all workers, regardless of size of the enterprise or number of employees, and 2. Voluntary contributions to the fund. I recognize these are progressive steps to the expectations of the players, but they are steps in the right direction, and I believe that as we continue this engagement, we will see how we accelerate progress to this expectation. There was a proposal to reduce the cost of data by Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, NITAU, and Uganda Communications Commission. I can confirm that there has been a 50% reduction in internet costs effective 1st August 2023. The price of internet moved from USD $70 to $35 per MBS per month. This will ultimately increase access to online services and boost private sector competitiveness. Number 6, prioritizing interventions to improve supportive and last-mile infrastructure by Ministry of Works and Transport, as well as local government, was a very strong message that you gave. To this end, government allocated 1 billion shillings to each local government this financial year to ensure maintenance of last-mile roads to ease movement of commodities from production sites to markets. Those of you who are involved, of course, in the agro-industry value chain will appreciate how vital this district, urban, and community access roads are in accessing markets. Lastly, there was a proposal on enhancing trade facilitation by developing an online commodity exchange system to reduce information asymmetry, guarantee quality and quantity of commodities, and further ease access to markets. Uganda Development Corporation is undertaking engagements with various private sector stakeholders to harmonize existing interventions as well as procure a consultant to develop this system. We appreciate the partnership and collaboration we have and continue to foster with many of you present here today, including those of you who are online. We appreciate your engagement to this end. On this point, I want to make special mention of the USAID Feed the Future IIS activity, the Competitiveness, Enterprise and Development Project, and other development partners whose support is helping us gain mileage on this journey. I thank you for participating and listening to me, and it's now my singular honor and pleasure to welcome the Permanent Secretary to the Treasury, here represented by the Director Economic Affairs, to give his remarks, after which he will do the necessary invitations following him. Mr. Kagwa, you're welcome.
Your Excellency, William Pope, the U.S. Ambassador to Uganda, the representative of the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, private sector representatives, our presenters and discussants, members of the academia, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I want to extend apologies of the PSST who couldn't be here today. So he's requested me to read his statement or his speech, and I'm going to do it verbatim. Good morning. I extend my appreciation to you all present today for sacrificing your time to be part of the 14th National Competitiveness Forum. I appreciate USAID, Feed the Future, ISS Advisory, and the Competitiveness and Enterprise Development Project for supporting this process. The National Competitiveness Forum is one of the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development's annual public-private engagement platform on private sector competitiveness that feeds into the budget process. Colleagues, this platform engages the real private sector players to help government identify and shape policy and budgetary processes in line with the private sector development issues. Ladies and gentlemen, in financial year 2022-23, the economy grew at 5.5% compared to 4.6% the previous year, which compares favorably with the average growth rate for sub-Saharan Africa, which is estimated at 3.6% for the calendar year 2023. The size of the economy is estimated at shillings 184.3 trillion compared to shillings 162.9 trillion the previous year. This is equivalent to US dollars for 49.4 billion compared to 45.6 billion in financial year 2021-2022. Our goal for financial year 2024-2025 is to accelerate economic growth to at least 6% and 7% in the medium term, with the ultimate goal of building an independent, integrated, and self-sustaining economy. This will involve transitioning from a raw materials-based to a manufacturing and knowledge-based economy, improving the involvement of doing business in Uganda and making it competitive is an important feature of this transition. Ladies and gentlemen, to achieve this target, we need to tap into the technical expertise of our private sector players to help us delve deep into value chains to identify potential sub-industries, product spaces, and investment opportunities which can help us grow our economy tenfold. On August 31, 2023, I met with value chain experts and investors in coffee, grains, and oilseed sectors who provided great insights and recommendations to unlock growth in these sectors, which my ministry is currently studying and will inform the next year's budget process. This 14th NCF is therefore under the theme boosting private sector investments in agro-industry to take advantage of regional opportunities. This is in line with the NDP3 agro-industrialization program goal of increasing commercialization and competitiveness of agricultural production and agro-processing. This program targets to A, increase the total export value of processed agricultural commodities, i.e. coffee, tea, fish, dairy, meat, and maize and its products, from $1 billion to $4 billion. Reduce the total value of imported cereals and cereal products, vegetable fats and oils, and sugar preparations from $931 million to $500 million. Increase the agriculture sector growth from 3.8% to 6%. Boost labor productivity in the agro-industrial value chain, value added in US dollars per worker from US dollars 616 to US dollars 830. C, create a number of jobs in agro-industry along the very value chains by 500,000. F, reduce the percentage of households depending on subsistence agriculture as a main source of livelihood from 68.9% to 55%. And G, enhance the proportion of households that are food secure from 60% to 80%. Our engagements and studies on the potential of value chains like the sugar value chain revealed a lot of untapped product spaces and investment opportunities for the private sector investments. These include the production of brown sugar, refined sugar, molasses, sweets, alcohol, ethanol, industrial carbon dioxide, fertilizers, and electricity. The product diversity means more jobs, revenue, exports, which would lead ultimately to economic transformation. The role of value chains in export performance. Uganda's export of merchandise goods amounted to US dollars 4.2 billion in April 2023 compared to 3.1 billion in April of 2022. This is a 35% increase, mainly from the export of gold, coffee, fish, sugar, beans, maize, and light manufactured products, most of which went to the regional markets. The government continues to support and boost access to financing for agro-industry and export performance. For example, we have the Agricultural Credit Facility, which as at 1st December 2022 had cumulatively extended credits amounting to $751 2.3 billion Uganda shillings to 2,970 value addition actors in dairy, horticulture, tea, coffee, poultry, edible oil extraction, and grain processing. 2, through UDC, government is partnering with private sector in agro-processing, manufacturing, and mineral beneficiation, where government has so far allocated 160.7 billion shillings in financial year 2022-23. There are also Emyoga funds. This is seed capital worth 249 billion, which has been dispersed to 6,721 beneficiaries through what you call constituency-based Emyoga circles. And to ensure consistency, government has further allocated 100 billion shillings for financial year 2023-2024. Government is also implementing the parish development model, where a total of 1,058 billion has been disbursed to 10,459 parish-based circles nationwide, which should translate into 100 million shillings per parish. And this financial year, government has allocated 1.1 trillion shillings to continue with this process. We hope that by the end of the program, we expect that the parish development model will give us the largest bank in the country, with investment worth 5 trillion. There is the investment for industrial transformation and employment project called Invite. This is a $200 facility to support new economic activities in manufacturing, value addition, and export in strategic sectors. There is also the growth opportunities and productivity for women, the GROW project, which is providing grants targeting mostly the youth and women entrepreneurs, with a grant worth $217 million. Other interventions include supportive infrastructure, especially upgrading of 66.8% of targeted roads, power subsidies of 5 US cents to large industries and value addition industries in the industrial parks. We also have several trade facilitation services, including the online business registration system, the one-stop border post, the implementation of the authorized economic operators program, and then completion of the Gulu logistics hub. Government has also invested in investment facilitation services, including the completion of the Uganda Business Facilitation Center in Kololo, which is the one-stop area. And this is currently occupied by Uganda Registration Services Bureau, Uganda Investment Authority, Capital Markets Authority. There are also continued investments into regional industrial parks, of which 10 are fully government-owned, while 5 are under public-private partnership arrangement. Boosting manufactured exports. Identification of investment opportunities in key value chains has boosted production for export, with manufactured products re-emerging as a major contributor to merchandise exports. In 2022, Uganda exported sugar worth 163 million, cement worth $87 million, plastics worth $61 million, soap $31 million, and beer worth $29 million. This shows the potential opportunities in the regional markets. And in April 2023, Uganda recorded a trade surplus of $1 billion with its East African Community trading partners. Today, I look forward to receiving practical solutions to develop our value chains, given their multiplier effects on social and economic transformation. This forum will address itself to cotton, textile and apparels, fish and aquaculture, as well as exploring potential and alternative financing products for private investments in agro-industry. As I conclude, we need to collectively find answers to one, how to address transformational needs in value chains in order to leverage their potential impact on the economy. Two, what bottlenecks along the value chains would you like us to address in the immediate, medium, and long term? And finally, what interventions do you recommend to prioritize in the next financial year budget to guarantee sustainable production for our industrialization and export development agenda? Thank you for listening to me, for God and my country. I now, I now take this opportunity and honor to invite Your Excellency, the U.S. Ambassador to Uganda, William Pope, to give your remarks. Thank you so much.
Mr. Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Director of Economic Affairs, Mr. Commissioner, all the representatives and officials of the Ugandan government present, private sector partners, development partners, representatives from communities, university, and civil society, distinguished guests, good morning. It's an honor and privilege to be with you today as the new U.S. Ambassador to Uganda, but also to participate in the 14th Annual National Competitiveness Forum and to be able to help support that effort through our U.S. Agency for International Development. And of course, thank you for all of you being here this morning, investing your valuable time in this important event. As President Biden highlighted at the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in December 2022, the United States is committed to investing in Africa's people and providing support to build sustainable and inclusive economies. In the spirit of the summit, the United States is very excited to promote this work with the people of Uganda. The United States believes strongly that a competitive economy will boost economic growth for all Ugandans. For this to be successful, the business environment and the investment framework must be open. This begins with key components, including a good regulatory framework, investment in human capital, and a clear commitment to the rule of law. But in 2023, it also goes further for many international investors to include areas such as protecting democratic space, fighting corruption, respecting human rights for all members of society, and many other areas. This is one reason, of course, why a range of countries, international organizations, and companies have expressed concern about laws such as the Anti-Homosexuality Act that harm not only Ugandans, but also the climate for investment. We look at these issues and see that countries that combine market-based economic policies, investment in people, support for transparency, and adherence to principles of democratic governance maximize not only competitiveness, which is critical, but also ensure that the benefits of economic growth reach the greatest number of citizens. Your dialogue today in this forum between the public and private sectors is an important building block in creating an inclusive, sustainable economy that can benefit all Ugandans. Without a doubt, Uganda's private sector is vital to this country's success and prosperity. A few quick numbers demonstrate this point very clearly. For example, the private sector generates 77% of formal jobs in Uganda and contributes over 70% of its gross domestic product. It funds 60% of all investments and employs approximately 2.5 million people, a majority of which are women and youth, and provides more than 80% of domestic government revenues. Given this importance, the United States firmly supports efforts to partner with the private sector to strengthen competitiveness. And we're helping to make this a reality in a myriad number of ways. Just a few examples include, over the course of this year, efforts by USAID to train 25 private sector industry associations to better serve their members. For instance, support to the Uganda Seed Traders Association to improve the security of its website directly has led to significant increase in visitor engagement on important issues such as the dangers of counterfeit agricultural inputs. Similarly, training that's been supported by the USAID to the communications team at the Uganda National Farmers Federation provided photography and videography skills that in turn were used to promote food security through new farming technologies that improve productivity. At the same time, we have helped in the formulation and implementation of the National Grain Trade Policy Implementation Strategy, which has seen grain exports increase from $2.5 million in 2016 to over $4.1 million in 2020. And just last week, the Uganda Investment Authority, with USAID support, launched the National Small and Medium Enterprise Portal. This digital solution fosters collaboration among businesses and public service providers such as the Uganda Registration Services Board and the Uganda Revenue Authority, among others. Today's National Competitiveness Forum embodies this principle of working together and the principle that transparent and vibrant economy is built upon public-private dialogues that create a strong operating environment for both Ugandan and international businesses operating here. So as you participate in the various sessions today, I encourage you to all think very critically about how we can collectively increase economic competitiveness from one sector to another, and also to consider how you can implement those changes in your daily work. I want to again thank you all for attending this important forum. On behalf of the United States government, we look forward to continuing to work with all of you to advance the competitiveness of Ugandan businesses and to increase prosperity for both of our nations. Thank you very much.
I haven't looked at the ambassador's itinerary since he arrived, but I think I can formally say this is the very, very first official ceremony at which he has presided. And can we give him a Ugandan warm welcome? You're most welcome, Your Excellency, and we want to thank you very much for finding time to join us this morning. That shows your commitment to the conversations we're having today. And a short while from now, Your Excellency, I know the teams will request on your way out, you look at the different exhibitors who are here. We have young women and men who would like to probably say hello and show you the great work they're doing in the arts space, in the value chain. Because I found a lady at the end there who has done fantastic maths with both our banana fibers and cotton. And she's done, I think I've booked the one that is there. So please don't take it, Your Excellency. So I will quickly introduce, before I invite the Honorable Minister to speak to us, the different exhibitors who are here. We have Nkore Designs. Nkore, I think, are the very first group where we are there. Nkore Designs, they are a startup company founded by young women, employing young women. who are dedicated to bringing the beauty and craftsmanship of the traditional hand-woven artisanal baskets to the modern world. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Nkore Designs. Yalelo Uganda advanced itself in being the Uganda's #1 aquaculture farm in East Africa, and we have 14 locations around Kampala and Jinja. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Yalelo Uganda. And then we have Masheda Mixed Farm located in Buyala on Mitiana Road, anchored on catfish farming on the banks of River Mayanja. Ladies and gentlemen, Masheda Mixed Farm. We have Fine Spinners Uganda, who will also be speaking on the panel today. Fine Spinners is a vertically integrated textile mill starting from locally grown cotton to spinning of yarn to the manufacturing of knitted and dyed fabric through both the export and domestic high-quality garments. Fine Spinners, round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Fine Spinners. We have Texfad. It's a banana textile industry that is transforming waste banana stems into high-quality, sustainable, and biodegradable hand-woven textile. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Texfad. And we have, yes, I think there's many more. I will run through that. I don't want to keep our guests here too long. And please find time, Honorable Minister and the Ambassador, to go through the team. I now take the pleasure of inviting the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, who is representing the Honorable Minister of Finance, to come and give his remarks. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Moderator, for this very important meeting today. I'm here to represent the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, who has had an abrupt appointment out of town. I therefore have the humble task of delivering his statement on this very important function. Here we go. Honourable Ministers, I hope they are there. Honourable Members of Parliament, I trust they are here. Your Excellency, the Ambassador William Pope of the United States of America to Uganda, Permanent Secretaries, Development Partners, Private Sector Participants, Civil Society Representatives, the members of research and academia, the media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be here with you to officiate at the 14th National Competitiveness Forum organized by my ministry in partnership with USAID, Feed the Future, ISS project, the CEDIP that is supported by the World Bank and implemented by the Private Sector Foundation, Uganda. The theme for this year's forum, as you have heard, is boosting private sector investments in agro-industry to take advantage of regional opportunities. It is extremely relevant because we are operating in an environment reeling from the effects of geopolitical tensions occasioned by the Russia-Ukraine war. On the heels of that, there was the COVID pandemic. On the heels of that, or as an offspring of that, there were supply chain disruptions and attendant actions by monetary authorities across the world to contain inflation, which raised interest rates. On the heels of that, there were declines in revenues collected by member states that led to expansion of the fiscal deficits, Uganda inclusive, and certainly in the fall of the revenues, the debt expanded exponentially, Uganda inclusive. All the above phenomena have an impact on our economy and can and could result into more constrained fiscal space for the government to operate. distinguished guests, the theme of this 14th NCF is also in line with the budget strategy for financial year 2024-25. That focuses on unlocking growth opportunities in selected value chains and regional markets. The overall aim of our strategy is to accelerate economic growth to at least 7% and transform the economy from dependence on raw materials to a manufacturing and knowledge-based economy. In fact, I have challenged the staff in the Ministry of Finance to work out strategies, working together with you, the private sector, on how to grow this economy tenfold in a period of over just slightly under a decade in an inclusive, transformative, and sustainable manner. And I'm very sure the ink is about to enter into paper after consultations with you in order to make this a reality. It is the only way we can quickly get out of these problems and also anchor a sustainable, real private sector anchored economic growth in this economy. This forum also comes at a time when HE, the President, has raised the target to increase the size of the economy nearly from $50 billion to $500 billion in the next 10 years. And I think the summary I gave prior to this statement attests to the intention of government in this direction. Government's commitment to support the private sector. I wish to recognize the immense contribution of the private sector in development of Uganda. The third development plan states that the private sector, as His Excellency equally alluded in statistics, generates 77% of formal jobs and contributes 80% to the GDP of this country. It is therefore important to ensure full participation, representation of the private sector in national discussions for policy development. This is at the core of the second national strategy for private sector development, which was launched on the 13th December 2022. In addition to this, government has developed the National Business Development Strategy Framework, which was launched in September also in 2022. The framework aims to strengthen the organizational and institutional capacity of the private sector to reduce the size of informal sector, because informality is certainly difficult to harness its full potential for itself and also for the growth of the economy. Building resilient and competitive medium, small and medium enterprises. These two strategies will support sustainable enterprise growth. In the budget speech of this financial year, government committed to do a number of things. I'll just capture 5, which are linked to the private sector. 1, increase domestic revenue mobilization and a reduction in non-concessional borrowing to ensure debt sustainability. 2, effective implementation of the parish development model and a MIOGA. You heard from the statement of the Permanent Secretary Treasury what government is doing in that area. 3, effective implementation of the various export development strategies and enhancing access to markets, regional, continental, and global. Certainly built on value-added products, so that go to the high end of the value chain instead of exporting primary products with their vulnerabilities in terms of the earnings out of that. 4, support the private sector by reducing the cost of doing business through the following 4 areas: construction of the standard gauge railway and rehabilitation of the meter gauge railway. These programs are ongoing. 2, development of small-scale solar-powered irrigation schemes to address climate change and ensure food security, given the character of the larger part of the population where production is on small scale and scattered all over the country, and therefore makes it difficult to deliver the energy from the grid. It therefore thought that solar-powered small irrigation schemes provide a climate-friendly atmosphere with which to have all year-round production to supply the agro-industry and also expand opportunities for the parishes to produce what they have chosen to produce consistently throughout the year. 4, maintenance, besides development of both tarmac and maram roads. You heard Commissioner Nyimu mention the amount of money which has been given to each of the local governments, 1 billion shillings for maintenance of the urban, rural and urban roads in good condition to evacuate produce from the farms to the markets. And 4, we are going to continue investment in industrial parks and energy transmission lines to power the supply of energy for production. Industrial parks actually are the basic hubs through which agro-industrial establishments can be put in order to absorb the output of the parishes, add value to those outputs, and provide then the outlets for marketing such production into domestic and regional as well as international markets in the quantities and standards that make that production function sustainable. The 5th area of things that we are doing is provision of quality seedlings, pesticides, fertilizers, storage, and marketing in the agro-industrialization value chain in order to increase agricultural output and productivity. And that also links very well with the need for us to have an inclusive production in this country where the pyramid at the bottom is involved in the production and in that process be able to earn income consistently and throughout the year, hence increasing household incomes and delivering them out of poverty. Number 6, we're also going to continue expanding our skilled labor force to meet the demand of a diversified economy, especially in industrial skills. In all that, a total of about 2.1 trillion has been provided to support wealth creators to access patient capital and affordable capital in productive areas as identified by His Excellency the President and under the NDP3, and there are quite a number of them, some of which certainly Director Economic Affairs on behalf of PSST highlighted. The Agricultural Credit Scheme, the Small Business Recovery Fund, whose teething problems, I think, are going to be sorted following the meeting we had about 2 weeks ago in order to unlock the little problems which were there, which were maybe institutional in terms of the delivery mechanism we had chosen to use. But I think I'm happy that the hiccups there have been overcome following the meeting that I've just mentioned. There are issues of Myoga support, the support through Uganda Development Bank, the equity interest, which is administered through the Uganda Development Bank on behalf of government, implementation of reforms in the retirement benefits area, which are going to continue, and the revolving fund under the parish development model, which I've just mentioned, will equally be the main anchors and drivers for support to the private sector right from the grassroots levels. Government is also implementing various interventions to boost production, productivity, and value addition with the goal of developing domestic competencies and scale as a foundation for industrialization in key commodities such as cassava, with multiple value additions and byproducts: maize, cotton, tea, beef, fish, palm oil, among others. And of course, there are citrus fruits of various categories across the country. NADS, UCDA, Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Industry, Uganda Development Corporation, and Ministry of Local Government have increased establishment of storage, processing, and value addition facilities across the country. This by no means will go a very long way in minimizing post-harvest losses, harnessing the output of the farmers without compromising the quality that's required for value addition and export markets. In addition, 296 value addition and storage facilities were completed during the financial year 2022-23 under the Agriculture Cluster Development Project, with a storage capacity of 54,579,000 metric tons. These are for maize, beans, coffee, and rice. 62 facilities are under construction and at various levels of fiscal progress. In order to develop export products with comparative and competitive advantage, government is stepping up enforcement of standards along the entire value chain, right from the farm to markets of agricultural products. You'll notice agriculture is a running theme throughout because of the diverse and wide bottom of the pyramid capture that it has on our population. This also includes reforming the Uganda National Bureau of Standards to improve its governance and technical capacity as a regulator that can effectively superintend and enforce standards. Moreover, in the budget strategy for next financial year, which is already out to aid agencies in preparing the budget for next financial year, I pronounced government's commitments to do a number of things. I'll summarize a few, about 6 of them. Focus, number 1, focus public resources on sectors with high output multipliers and employment potentials, such as coffee, cotton, grain. I heard His Excellency and Ambassador mention the actions that we are doing together with USAID in this area: oilseeds, fish, and tea. Number 2, ease access to affordable credit for small farmers and increasing long-term capital for businesses to support agro-industrialization through the channels earlier mentioned. C, implement the warehouse receipt system to help in sensitization, education, financing, transportation, aggregation, storage, quality standards, and linkages to markets. Of course, it's understood that they will be organized in a formal way in order to be able to maximize the benefit of the use of this system in order to achieve this. 4, improve agricultural productivity, especially of coffee and tea, by increasing the yields per acre, and this can be cascaded to the rest of the products so that we really make better use and efficient use of the agricultural production, which currently is assessed to be reasonably suboptimal. E, effectively implement rules and regulations to support exports in the beef, horticulture, and other agricultural products. This includes eliminating counterfeit products, including pesticides, fertilizers, vaccines, and etc., which introduce unwanted elements in these products with respect to the market demand. 6, support farmers to access micro-scale irrigation systems, including through the U-Gift program of cost sharing for acquisition of irrigation equipment where an individual contributes 25% and government contributes 75% of the cost of that equipment. 7 is to implement and mainstream climate change mitigation strategies such as carbon pricing, diversification, expansion of geographical coverage of electricity sources to support agro-industrialization and expansion of climate-smart infrastructure, e.g. rail transport. The budget for next financial year will also prioritize climate-smart agriculture through funding for mechanization, seed multiplication and research, scaling up small-scale solar-powered irrigation, pest and disease control, agricultural inputs, and certification. In conclusion, distinguished guests, I believe that these aforementioned interventions, with those, Uganda will be able to be well placed to continue on its recovery and growth trajectory. The discussions and recommendations from this forum will be duly considered and as we formulate the budget for next financial year. Therefore, I expect that this forum will, 1, appreciate that the lessons picked from previous fora that have helped shape the policy and landscape and allocation of public resources to meet the diversification of our national needs will be taken on. B, deliberate on measures to hasten the pace of economic recovery, as well as agreeing on modalities for improving delivery of private sector development initiatives and leveraging on the success stories in the private sector. The frontliner countries in the Far East had to pick winners, contrary to the economic notion that you cannot pick winners in some circles. Picking winners is very important. And where there are such advantages in the private sector, we need to pick winners, build around them, learn lessons from them, run with them. It has worked, and it will work for us as well. Number 4, from this forum, I look forward to advice to government on how best to support private sector, exploit investment opportunities, improve product spaces, and stop the export of low value-added exports in grain, coffee, tea, fish, cotton, and now that I'm representing the minister, I'll take the advantage of adding minerals to this list. There should absolutely be no need to export these low-value items because of, 1, the erratic nature of the earnings that you get out of it. 2, the value that you are forfeiting in terms of exporting them in the raw form. 3, the employment opportunities that otherwise would arise if you are to add value here. 4, the economic integration that will come as a result of you processing those items here. 6, the sustainable growth that will arise as a result of processing these materials here. I could go on and on, but the advantages of processing here along the value chains and exporting finished products or high value items to external markets is extremely important, and we should pay attention to it as we develop advisory on how best this can be exploited. This forum also look forward for you to consider emerging proposals to inform economic policy development, planning, and execution for next financial year. As I said, this should include, among others, strategic ideas on how to grow this economy tenfold and over in a decade. It can be done. The Far East countries did it. 25 years, 33 years, and the whole world is now different in that place. I was in Busan, South Korea last week. 60 years ago, they were exactly where we were. fragmented smallholder production units. But they took a decision and they used one product, rice. And together with rice, they went ahead and picked winners and built the invitation of the FDI into the economy using the pillars of those winners. And they have it. We are told Nigeria donated rice to South Korea 6 years ago. But now Nigeria imports rice from South Korea, and so on and so forth. We can do it. They did it, we can do it. Finally, I thank all partners in development, including the private sector umbrella associations, the private sector donor group, I think word donor is not good, the private sector development partner group, research institutions, ministries, departments and agencies, civil society, and the media for your tireless efforts in striving to improve the competitiveness of Uganda's economy. Because the competitiveness of Uganda's economy means we're exporting more, we're earning more from exports. We're able to pay our debt external with ease on account of the export earnings to debt ratios without stress in the economy. It can be done. It is at this juncture that I now declare this 14th National Competitiveness Forum open, and I wish you fruitful deliberations for God and my country.
Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for the Honourable Minister, here represented by the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. We want to thank you, sir, and just introduce one or two things before I ask the Minister and the Ambassador to just do a walkthrough on the exhibition on their way out. I did skip a textile development agency, Textile, training and production of textiles in areas of handloom weaving, garment construction, product development, and surface design. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Textile, who are also here. Your Excellency, the Ambassador and the Honourable Minister, there's only one ask. We will have just a couple of photos here. The very first photo, of course, being our high table. And then I will invite both Dr. Medina and Dr. Muhumuza to join us after that with their panelists who are here for a photo moment with the Minister and Ambassador. So I want to humbly request the Honourable Minister and the Ambassador to come with your colleagues, Nelson, Moses and Joseph, to please come to the front for the very first photo. And then thereafter we'll have our panelists, including Dr. Medina and Dr. Fred. So that's the next set, panelists with our moderators. But in a very special way, as we settle in, yes, Diana, thank you. I'm glad that is settled. In a special way, allow me request that we put our hands together for Dr. Peter Ngatejize, who is here with us. And there's the brainchild of NCF, and he saw NCF all the way to its 12th birthday. And now we are at the 14th. So we want to thank you, Dr. Peter, for this milestone, all right? So this is the very, very, very first photo. And after this, the panelists and our moderators, if you can now make your way, please come. Panelists who are here and the moderators, Fred and Dr. Medina, please come. That's the only opportunity you have to finally have a photo with the U.S. Ambassador, the freshly accredited U.S. Ambassador to Uganda. Dr. Fred was here. I'm looking for him now, and I can't. And he was very smart in his kitenge. Panelists, very quickly, if you could join. And for us, the guests, please note that we'll have time to engage with our exhibitors through the day. They will be here with us. And I want to appreciate the Ministry of Finance. These exhibitors are part of the various entrepreneurs that the ministry has actually been visiting. And the ministry has taken it upon itself to visit all these entrepreneurs to understand the challenges they have, and also speak to some of the areas that they would like to see interventions, given that we are still in a post-COVID era. And as the DST or the Honourable Minister was speaking, we are still talking recovery. And that's the conversation we've been having as a ministry with these entrepreneurs, and most of them have been visited by the ministry and all the stakeholders in the ministry to inform the budget directions and the government interventions in the next financial year 24-25. So ladies and gentlemen, can we once again put our hands together for the Honourable Minister and the Ambassador for joining us this morning. Honourable Minister, feel free to lead the Ambassador to the exhibition, we will very shortly transition to the next session. Our next session will be moderated by Medina Guloba, who is a research fellow at the Economic Policy Research Center. She will also introduce her panel, the members of her panel, and they will have just 1 hour. So Dr. Medina, the 1.5, I don't have anymore. You have 1 hour. That will lead us into a very fast health break. And immediately after that, we'll run to the second panel. And again, Dr. Medina will invite her next set of panelists. And that will lead us into lunch. And after lunch, Dr. Fred Muhumuza will then start the next session that will be looking at the alternative financing opportunities to boost private investments in the agro industry. All right, so Dr. Medina, if you could make your way and come, and I will allow you to come and then invite your panelists. But we'll allow for the Ambassador and the Honourable Minister just to do a walkthrough. And so, Dr. Medina, you will come and just have a seat here, and we begin to ensure that all the panelists who we are supposed to be having in the very first session, but feel free, panelists of the very first session, to come, so that I allow for Doctor to introduce you after you've all come to the front. So panelists in the very first session, our session on enhancing investment opportunities in the agro industry for youth, women, and lessons from the cotton value chains. Please come, our panelists, in this very first session.
morning, everyone. All protocol observed. I'm hoping everyone has taken a cup of tea, so I just do hope we have more energy than that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, so I know there's nothing aspects of food security, which is also fish, which is on the program. So I know we are all being well fed behind there. So we need to have more energy in these panel sessions. I would like to invite our speaker, who's going to be presenting at least a bit. I'll give him short time, Mr. Richard Mubiru, the Corporate Affairs Director, Nyanza Textile Industries. And Richard is a lawyer by profession with a business, passion for business. You know, it's really rare to see lawyers in that sense. But you're welcome, instead, other than giving us visitations, to say business person here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Richard, have a seat. So he has several issues around business administration and management accreditations. He's hugely involved in directing trade policy issues at the local, regional, and international level. As you see his profile, at the UMA, that's the Uganda Manufacturing Association Board, he chairs the Economic Board Committee that directs manufacturing and trade policy. You can say lawyer in an economic sense. That's what we're having here. He's also the director at Southern Rain Nyanza Limited, that's NITIL. Is it NITIL? Yes, NITIL. And the board member of the MOVES Economic Forum. In actual sense, Richard, you're an economist, dressed up as a lawyer. So welcome, Richard. A big round of applause to our presenter today. The panelists that are going to be discussing, Richard, is input. Part of the transformation process that we see in this area of cotton. I would like to invite Mr. Bedi Savage, the CEO of Fine Spinners. We can't have his profile coming on as he comes on board. You're welcome, Mr. Bedi. There he is. So we do have esteemed. So, just a moment. Do we have Miss Santa as well? I have not seen Santa. If Santa is around, please come as well. So Kimani? He's the one around? Okay. So we have Mr. Kimani Muturi, the CEO of Textile. Please do come on the front. And we do have his profile there, with Kimani having over 20 years experience in textile skills. He has established textile weaving programs at Makerere and Chambogo University. He's also a lecturer at Chambogo. Definitely, the moment I see him establishing programs of teaching, there's a teaching element to yourself. He's also the secretary of the African Roundtable for Sustainable Consumption and Production, and the current chair of the Uganda Hand Weavers Association. You're welcome, Mr. Muturi. Then Mr. Dr. Michael, again, definitely without, we need research in this whole process. So you're welcome, Doctor, to this panel. And Doctor, again, he's the director of the National Semi-Arid Research Institute, and he's also had previously served in the research department as a scientific officer and moved through the ranks to become the senior principal research fellow. And at the end of the day, we are very distinguished to have the brains behind what we need in research for value chains development on our panel. And lastly, I would like to invite Mr. Bob Ongen, Alberto, the board, Uganda Ginners and Cotton Exporters Association. You're welcome, Mr. Bob Alberto. He's the general manager of West Actually Cooperative Union. As you've seen, the kind of persons that he's holding his docket with 15 years of experience within the cotton value chain, with a bachelor's degree from Makerere University, So those who are seeing Makerere online, we still have good outputs from Makerere we are seeing today. So you're welcome, Bob, to this panel. We are missing a female, and Santa is not here. Probably I'll be representing the females only you're seeing here today. But this is a fully fledged male panel. And we hope even us who contribute to the cotton chain itself, we are here dressed in cotton. So please, we recognize the women within the within the midst we have. So a round of applause to the women we have. Sylvia, you've been, I think you and Santa, you used to be in the same business before you joined the team of researchers within the OWC. So really, you are going to come here as a fashion icon. Are we together? So Sylvia, as you come to speak to us here on this panel, you're going to be a very good representative and sit-in for Santa, since you've been in this business for quite some time as well within the fashion industry. So please, ladies and gentlemen, a hand of applause to Sylvia. So as the panel, as the ambassador and the honorable minister are going through the stalls, we are going to still keep up time and start the presentations, because we need to keep on time, if you may allow. So I would like to invite Mr. Mubiru, Richard, to make a 10-minute presentation. Make it impactful. Okay? High impact, high attendance. So make sure you keep us in line in this presentation you're going to make, such that we have a good feedback for you. You're welcome, Mr. Mubiru.
You say 10 minutes.
Make it in 10.
10. I'm finished. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As introduced, my name is Richard Mubiru, and I want to stand on the earlier protocol. Being a typical private sector man, I cannot claim to know protocol better than government. But from the onset, I want to make the following remarks. Number one, to thank the Minister of Finance for this opportunity, and also to give you good feedback that in another forum that brings manufacturers together in the ESC, the government of Uganda was voted to be the most responsive government when it comes to policy formulation. I thought that this was very good for you to have as feedback. The structure of the presentation I have is as displayed on the screen, and in the interest of time, I won't go there. By way of background, we are here to speak to the value chain that has got a history of policy formulation that has defined it, starting with the 2009 National Textile Policy that was never implemented largely, and we understand that it was because it was out of context for the NDP regime. Then we had very good consultations, and we commend government for that have informed the now new national cotton, textiles and apparel strategy for the period 2020 to 2030. But fundamentally, this is what will define the sharing I will do, and I can dare tell you it has all the answers. And at this juncture, I want to invite government to really focus attention to implementation of the national cotton, textiles and apparel strategy, whose formulation drew the participation of private sector, and it largely mirrors what has to be done in the sector. The next is basically to share the goal and objectives of the CTA strategy that we already have, and they are 6 in number, increasing cotton fiber production. I was seated with colleagues from the Cotton Development Organization, and I want to request them to stand up for recognition, because we cannot be here discussing matters cotton without CDO. A round of applause for them. Those people provide the fiber that we use. And I've seen a couple of Ginas who supply the fiber. Can you please stand up for recognition? If I don't recognize you, you will not supply cotton. Those are the people that actually supply cotton, but an important policy intervention here, especially for the likes of my brother, Mr. Joseph Enyim, is that cotton production remains typically a private sector undertaking in Uganda, and yet it requires, by its nature, a lot of government intervention at the production level. So I will invite government to address the gaps I know that will be shared during the discussion. The other objectives are well laid out, and they speak basically to value addition. I don't want to actually enumerate each one of them because of time. Continuing in the background is to share with you the targets that have been set out by the strategy I was speaking to, and they're beautiful targets. You can see in terms of cotton production, we are looking at almost tripling cotton production in the next 10 years. And when it comes to employment, we are looking at creating 2.5 million jobs, which speaks to what Mr. Ochaila spoke to earlier. And in terms of value, we are looking at growing export revenues from $60 million to $2.5 billion. And I know that this resonates with what we are speaking to in terms of growing the economy tenfold. And lastly, is attracting $5 billion of investment into the value chain by 2030. The last thing, 2 things that I need to mention is that the implementation of the strategy requires 3.9 trillion. I know this is not the greatest thing that you need to hear when we have all these fiscal challenges that we have as a country, but we think that we have a way out in terms of looking at other ways of financing it, in terms of PPPs, and of course looking at tax policy and other measures. I will just speak to PPPs. We are speaking at a dialogue organized by the Minister of Finance, and we're very happy because the Minister of Finance also houses the PPP Secretariat. And I'll speak very passionately here. We complain about availability of capital for investment, but we have failed to operationalize the PPP law and policy that can unlock financing challenges. So the message to government and Minister of Finance in particular, you need to reconfigure the PPP Secretariat. In other spaces in this region where we do business, projects that are supposed to be financed, like we have enumerated them under the NDP 3 for textiles, would be on the website of the PPP Secretariat, such that the private sector knows that these are the following projects available and this is the amount of money required. You need to recalibrate that so that moving forward we can really get people to finance activities in the sector. The structure of the cotton, textile and apparel sector is what is displayed. I will talk to only one fundamental revelation from this structure, and that is the fact that, unfortunately, the most critical segment of the structure, which is spinning and weaving, is where we have least attracted investment. And because we have least attracted investment in those two, is a reason why up to 90% of Uganda's lint continues to be exported without value addition. And I'll share with you numbers of CAF. The turnover between nitrile and fine spinners is in the region of $50 million. At the peak of cotton production in Uganda, I think our realization from exportation of lint has been $58 to $60 million. Now, it shows you that value addition on only 10% yields almost what you fetch by exporting 90%. No brainers. You don't have to call any professor here. It is as straightforward as it is that you need to attract investment, especially in spinning and weaving, then you are sorted. The next component is, of course, to share with you the global context in terms of market access. We are looking at a sector that can command well close to $1.5 trillion by 2028. And of course, that is within the period that the Mr. Ochailap spoke to, where we need to actually grow the economy tenfold. We think that in terms of international market availability, we have no problem, but we need to do basics properly. What does the region say? Region exports have slightly increased to slightly less than $800 million in 2020, but dominated by upper exports to especially the US, constituting 68%. What is important to note for this is that these numbers don't have a lot of value for Uganda, because the largest exporter in the region remains Kenya, and it remains actually the major player when you talk about ESC CTA exports. What about imports? Imports are in the region of close to $3 billion by 2020, and for us as sector players, this confirms that actually we have a lot of scope for even regional exports, because $3 billion is what we have imported, yet we end up exporting almost 90% on average of our cotton lint. I could continue with the regional context, but I think the summary of all that is to confirm that I think at a regional level we need to reconfigure the duty remission and exemption regimes, rationalize them relative with capacity growth. Furthermore, since we are speaking to growing intra-Africa trade, I need to speak to the Continental Free Trade Area, $3.4 trillion in value terms, 1.3 billion people, a huge market. And of course, we think that certainly we need to look at the rules of origin to ensure that actually we partake of that market. For COMESA, what Uganda has faced in the last couple of years is actually universal for the COMESA region, despite the fact that the earlier intervention by COMESA to develop a strategy was in 2009. At a COMESA level, imports stand at $8.4 billion by 2020, and which definitely confirms that even at that level, we have a market to speak about. Allow me to delve into how we are performing at a national level, and I think I will take some minutes to debate this with you. The first thing is that we certainly have the lowest spinning capacities, relative, of course, to Asia, and it confirms why we continue importing even yarn, notwithstanding the fact that we have good cotton. The second aspect is that we continue exporting up to 90% of our lint, as I said before, notwithstanding that the people who produce this lint are 250,000 households dependent on rain-fed agriculture, and they manage it as smallholder farmers. Of course, I need to recognize that government is encouraging commercial farming, and I think the pioneer is the prisons service in this regard. Now, talk about cotton production. We are not complaining because the product is available, and is in the region of 150,000 bales on average per annum. But this is quite scalable because our history will tell you that at the peak of cotton lint production, we reached 1 million bales. And it's not surprising that the president has given the same target to the prisons services. Just to further share with you production at a local level, the number of spindles that we have are less than 30,000 spindles. And I will tell you that for China, you'll find that 30,000 is actually less than 25% of a one mill in terms of capacity, because you have mills that have 100,000 spindles, etc. I have half of my time gone, but I'm doing very well, doctor, you don't have to worry. At a weaving level, we are doing just about 500,000 meters of fabrics per day, which is not great at all. Knitting, they are about 200,000 tons per day, which is still low. Garmenting, incidentally, we're not doing as bad. And allow me to basically recognize the chairman of the Tailors Association. He was seated right there, Mr. Sechimpi. He has got a membership of more than 20,000 tailors in this country. There are various technologies in terms of actually garment facilities, and we think that these are guys that need to be assisted to especially address our clothing needs. And also very importantly to share with you, as a parent, I have never imported a ready-made uniform from any part of the world. This one confirms that Uganda has in excess of a capacity to doing 10 million garments under the uniform segment. Why is this number important? This number can then become the success story onto which we can build the future of Uganda's capacity to clothe its people, especially in the face of the new political economy relating second-hand clothing, etc., as it has played out already. How are we doing in terms of imports and exports for Uganda? The two images show you how we are performing. But for me, the most important thing is the one for exports. What you see in that orange color is the fiber we continue to export without value addition. Now, areas of investment, as I tend to finish very quickly. For us, the first is spinning and weaving. Now, to speak to you about the capex that we're speaking to, if you want to establish a 25,000 spinning mill, you require $30 million. Now, what it delivers is that it can then consume 20% of the lint that you produce. Therefore, to consume all the cotton that we have in Uganda, you require at least 5 spinning mills at the level of 25,000 spindles. Now, in terms of value, you are talking about 30 million times 5. Now, weaving is a little less expensive relative to spinning. but still have a capacity. Our experience shows that that is the reason you are not able to see many people coming into the space. And the economists in this room know that where the private sector confirms market failure, that's when government should intervene. And I know Joseph is taking note for this. The other areas for investment are in Capital Roman 2. I will not read everything, but they speak to what the EAC region has confirmed to be the missing link that we need to do all the way from 2019. Among others, is to speak to cotton seed production, is to speak to increasing actual exports into the region, local market capture, etc., etc. In the interest of time, I don't want to delve into that. I know all of you can read, and I will not take your time in that regard. But allow me, as I tend to conclude, because Dr. Medina wants me out of here, is to speak to key recommendations. Key recommendations in this space are informed by really the value in value addition as seen in the figure that has been displayed. It clearly tells you that if you are able as a country and as an economy to add value onto lint, you have an 8-factor of value multiplication from lint to made-up garments. Meaning that if you are doing exports of $50 million in lint, you can multiply that value by 8 and you will have $400 million. To us, this can resolve the question that had been put across to us by Mr. Ochailap, because he wants a 10-fold growth. In specific terms, the first one is to address the implementation of the strategy. Joseph and my senior brother Moses, there are no shortcuts, unfortunately. Countries that have made it in textile, for example, India, they have a fully fledged ministry for textiles. They have got even a capital fund that is looking at transformation of technology in the sector. We are not there, I agree, but we can do a few things. And what this strategy speaks to are issues of standards, which you spoke to. What we have seen about standards is that UNBS is driven by collection of fees. Standards is supposed to be a service because you want to comply to be able to export. So you need to reconfigure that. There are issues to do with de-risking of exports under the strategy. I can tell you that we do not optimally export not because we don't have products. The regional markets which are next to us are volatile. You have heard of the stories of Southern Sudan, Congo, and etc. Traders losing value. Joseph, what we speak to here is to have an export guarantee insurance. We are willing to pay for it, but let there be the product on the market. I've spoken about this for quite some time, and in your presence, we would want to see action over this. The other is hand-walking of red exporters into new markets. Every time we see other dignitaries coming into our capital, they come with their private sector. Can we see a scenario where we have textile ready to export companies going as part of government delegations into the region to ensure that we can do better in terms of that? The second major one is, of course, the PPP thing that we spoke to. Under NDP 3, it identified textile projects that needed to be implemented. Up to now, we have not seen a single. Now, you cannot come here and talk about transforming the economy, grow it by 10-fold, without doing basics. And I'll repeat, don't expect miracles. Where industry has taken root, and manufacturing in particular, government is playing the leading role. You want to see us perform do what you commit to do as government. And we would want to see that this idea of the textile projects that are under NDP3 is supported, and I'm saying this as my senior brother, Mr. Chilap, winds up to go, but I'm stressing we would want to see PPPs operationalized under your ministry. In the region, we don't ever look for projects to finance on a PPP model. They are even on a website. You go to Zambia, you go to Malawi, we have done business there, you don't look for opportunity. The PPP unit must have these projects ready to be financed. The private sector can come in such that matters are made easy. But even if information sharing is also a struggle, then it becomes very difficult. I wanted to stress this in your presence before you can go. Now you can go. Thank you very much. I am winding up. I need 3 minutes and I'm done. Madina. I need 3 minutes. These are very, very passionate things for me. The third is, of course, to talk about financial intermediation for the sector. I spoke about the huge capex that you require for this sector. And I did hear about, pension reform, NSSF, etc. What I did not hear, Joseph, is what is it that we're going to do to attract heavy capex on a long-term basis, which is domesticated in Uganda. We cannot shy away from this. This is the reality. Countries that are making it have made it intentional for government to avail this money. We want to see strategic partnerships along this. You cannot leave it to us. There has been market failure for the many years I've been in this sector. You cannot run away from it. It's a reality that we must address. Otherwise, we shall come back at the end of the 10 years when we have not moved. I thought that I needed to be a little emotional for me to deliver better. 2 points and I'm out of here. There have been beautiful things that have been done for the CTA in Uganda, and we appreciate. All we are speaking to is sustainability of this. Uganda's major challenge is the tokenism in actually policy formulation and implementation. When I need a cocktail of interventions to be able to perform, you will give me 1 or 2 out of 5. I will dare tell you, and my brother from Fine Spinners will speak to this in the discussion, it doesn't work that way. Textile, for countries that have made it, is about a buffet of interventions. Yes, there's been some intervention on power, buffer stock, etc. But then there's also conversation around now, taking them away. How do you dare structure investment which require 10 years down the road to recover it, when every 2-3 years I have to come and debate for policy? This is not our business. It is the business of government to ensure that there is policy. Our job should be to focus on production. The efficiency and competitiveness of China and India is because you find a mill that runs 10 million meters of one item because the policy has been aligned to guarantee that. What I have to do, even with the latest of technology, he will tell you the same thing. I have to keep on changing my product mix every after 100,000 meters. I can never gain efficiency. I do that because I am being squeezed out of a local market. My friend will speak about this, because there are people in this country that are able to bring in fabric at no duty. Under the EAC regime to which we have signed up, there is a 4-band structure. It has been informed by value addition. You have your basic fiber, you have yarn, you have fabric and garments. For you to attract value in this long value chain, you have to respect it. The moment you distort it as government and allow anybody in an industrial park who is not exporting, but who is selling in the same local and regional markets where we're playing, to bring in without paying duty, who then buys from the vertical mills. You are speaking about vertical integration. You are not supporting vertical integration by policy. So it is basic. We need to walk the talk. And for me, I thank you because you have given us the opportunity. But lastly, maybe two things and I'm done. One is human capital development. You are from Makerere. Human capital development. Capacity of human resource training across the value chain. The very, very last is a dialogue, interagency dialogue, that brings together with all the boys in the room, including the Ministry for Industry. I didn't see anybody from industry this morning. I don't know whether it was by design or otherwise. I can tell you, we can never exhaust what we need to do in these 10 or 15 minutes I've been given. We are ready as private sector to engage you and see that we can operationalize the strategy that our cabinet has signed up to. But we need to have this dialogue sustained beyond this. This can only be the beginning. I want to thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. Medina, for bearing with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mubi. Again, at least a round of applause. You know, he was so passionate when the Honorable Minister was around that I tried to stop, but he needed to make his speech. And since this is their day, because about time cotton was discussed, for me it is something that's missing within the spaces that have been created. And it's a good thing that Minister of Finance really created this platform to discuss cotton. It's one of those forgotten commodities that is yielding lots of revenue, but rarely discussed in such a forum. And Mr. Muriu has actually talked about so many passionate aspects today. And we have a whole team of panelists that are contributing to this transformation of the 60 to 80 million US dollars per annum. One of the things that I realized on my panel today is that I'm missing one critical value chain player, and that's the farmer. I think one of the aspects that would have had in terms of this transformation would have been one of the farmers to also give us their story in terms of contributing to this transformation of the value chain of cotton. So I would like my panelists to keep on time, at least 3 minutes speech, get together, and then we come back to ensure that you stick to those issues that you want the audience to take away, because I know Minister of Finance is passionate about getting the actual transformation points they want to take on, and not only on lamentations, but on the way forward. So right from Mr. Bedi here, what are those transformation needs that you need to have that can leverage on to take this industry ahead as a player within the spinning industry?
Thank you very much. So I think, thank Richard for his presentation. It was quite succinct and quite accurate with the concerns this sector faces. I think simply, if we look at the 5 drivers of competitiveness in any value chain, is how we need to address the supply side. So you've got raw materials, which in our case is cotton. So we've got adequate amount of cotton, as you can see, 150,000 bales. We're consuming 10% between the two of us. So the volume is not the problem. The issue at this side is the price. Because when you're looking at a domestic value chain, I presume you have this across fish, you have it across grains and sugar. It should be the domestic cost base which dictates the competitiveness, not international global prices where you trade. So when I buy cotton in Uganda, I'm buying it at New York ICE number 2 futures pricing, which includes carriage and transport to the US, which is not happening. So I think if you address the side on spinning, which is what would attract spinning mills here to Uganda, it would be effectively priced cotton. Now, India and China, the 2 success stories we talk about, have different ways of handling this. China has a higher farm gate price, but then they subsidize the production. India gives a 6% export rebate on garments. There's various ways to handle this, but the cost of the domestic value chain, which is very competitive, agricultural value addition in Uganda is only possible because you have one of the lowest cost basis for agricultural production. So we should capitalize on that. The other thing on the spinning side, so to make sure that we have got enough investment in the part which actually matters in the supply chain, is to ensure that there's long-term capital available. If you look at, he's saying 30,000 spindles in Uganda, that's probably half of Kenya's installation, half of Tanzania. So even regionally, we're doing pretty poorly. And if you look at the largest investment recently in this space, it's been Rivertex in Kenya, which was done in conjunction with the Kenya government and India Exim Bank money, which is at 1.5% for 20 years. Now, we don't have that sort of development capital here that needs to be applied to the spinning sector to actually add value to domestic cotton. So that's that on the raw material side. Now, talking about the other four that are remaining. Infrastructure, I guess that's sector-wide. It goes across all the sectors. We need to make sure we have a railway that gets here, an SGR that we developed in Kenya. We need to make sure that the roads infrastructure is facilitating trade. I guess that's bigger than just the cotton sector. On the labor side, there's an abundance of labor. Uganda has a very young population. Training is incredibly important, and efficiency and productivity. Kenya does more than $500 million under the AGOA program exporting to the US of garments primarily. 70% of that value still goes to China and Asia because that's the value of fabric. Uganda's opportunity, having such an abundance of cotton, which Kenya does not have, and Kenya is the main player in the apparel space, is to actually fit into that supply chain and make fabric for export through Kenya. Kenya has higher efficiencies in garment manufacturing, and that's been because the industry's been around there for longer. However, we as Uganda, given the fact that we have abundance of raw material, a very good quality of raw material, we should focus on the biggest amount of the transformation of value addition, which is creation of fabric, which is why, as Mubiru was saying, you must look at the spinning side of the investment angle to deliver that. In terms of training, I think we need to work with government agencies to improve training programs with the private sector, because it's not useful for them going to university and getting theoretical ideas of how to actually operate in the space. Industrial engineering with the private sector would be a good way to release that value. In terms of utility, water cost is surprisingly high in Uganda, considering that it is the country's 30% underwater with the lakes. That needs to be worked on. Electricity is moving in the right direction at a macro angle for the entire country, but also the subsidies that are relevant to the sector is very important. Now, that is a main driver along with the cost of cotton, which will allow for spinning investment in this country. It's already at 5 cents due to the subsidy program, and that is on par with the rest of the world, so I commend the Ministry of Finance for that. And finally, I touched on this, it all goes back to the financing. The financing of these value chains are usually done by developmental partners, long duration money, which is also at an affordable rate. You cannot have investment in this sector which is going to be in the tune of about $100, $150 million through commercial banks, especially with US base rates at 5.25 to 5.5, as we saw Jerome Powell maintain it yesterday. The cost to borrow here in dollars is like 11, 12%. Makes absolutely no sense. So yeah, if I was going to say what the government needs to focus on, it definitely needs to look at unlocking developmental capital for this investment. As Mubiru alluded, there are 2 companies right now which do the same amount as the total raw cotton exports. If you had 10 fine spinners, you'd be doing about $1 billion of exports. That would take it on par with coffee, which is your largest export. So I think it needs to have we need to have a long-term view of how we're going to develop this sector and focus on maintaining the CET regime. As Mubiru said, we have a 4-band structure. If we allow duty-free access of fabric into the country to promote small garmenting jobs in EPZs and SEZs and economic zones, in Kenya that happens, but you export those garments. They don't make their way into the domestic market. If that happens, you're never going to have development in the textile side, which means your lint will continue to be exported, you'll import fabric, and you'll add a little bit of value addition on garmenting, which I don't think is the aim of the development policy of the government in this sector.
Now, thank you, Mr. Ben. You know, he has spoken so many things that probably, if we have time, you need to expound on. But as we go to the next panelist, I'd like to think through the specificities in terms of, if we're speaking of prices, that's a big critical problem. Even the farmers we spoke to as EPRC, they were speaking about the timeliness of the price in terms of how this price trickles down to them to incentivize them to actually produce. So we need to know, as a spinner, the kind of price you're talking about as at your level or approach to your level to encourage the farmers to make sure they produce sustainably for yourself. And also, as you come in at a later point, to think through the specificities in terms of the skills, because you touched around them, but then we need to produce the certain kind of skills that you need. Because sometimes you might require low skills, but which kind of skills? And high skills, which kind of skills? Because as you see from our theme, we're talking about women and youth. And that way they can be strategic in the training programs that you're talking about. So in our next panelist, I would like to hear more from Dr. Michael in terms of what has been your role in transforming this chain, in terms of research, capacity, R&D, as Nassari.
Yeah, thank you so much, moderator. As you know, research is a continuous process whereby, we need to continue developing materials, developing varieties that will meet, industrial needs or the market needs. It was mentioned by the presenter, he talked about, fiber qualities. There are certain qualities that we need to look at the research level, because if we don't look at them, then we have a problem. The fiber quality was talking about, cotton varieties have different fiber qualities depending on the end use. Some of them for apparels, they need different qualities. If you're going to talk about pharmaceuticals in terms of cotton wool, you need different qualities. So all those are things that we need to be looking at as we continue developing. In terms of their strength also, they are different because, depending on what the end product is going to be, you also need to look at the strength. We also need to look at how do we enhance production at farm level, because there are quite a number of challenges. Some of them have been mentioned since morning that are facing farmers, at farm level. So we need to develop technology skills that can enhance production at farm level. Major problems are really diseases. People talked a lot about chemicals being used most of the time because of the pests and diseases that affect cotton. So we need to see how do we work to come up with some integrated approach where we don't use a lot of chemicals, but at least still have cotton that can come out at farm level. So there are quite a number of other things that we look at. They are talking about the spinning and coming out apparels, but there are also so many other value-added products that can come from cotton.
Doctor,
we have the stocks.
Before you continue, I would like to hear more as Nassari. What kind of specific research support are you giving to ensure that these differences are actually being met?
One, we are developing varieties that meet the market needs. That is one. Secondly, we are enhancing production by developing integrated pest management strategies so that production is enhanced. Thirdly, soil fertility is a problem. We are working on soil fertility to make sure we give the farmers the right options to produce so that what they produce can fit in the market. And we are also looking at, talking about biorationals. That is looking at biopesticides. We are currently working on some biopesticides that are coming from plants. Rather than using a lot of, the materials, inorganic materials that we have now, we are going towards using biorationals. We can add a bit of inorganic, but we also need to start with biorationals. So those are the areas we are really looking at. And the area of seed multiplication, the nuclear seeds, breeder seeds and foundation seeds. And from there, they are taken over by either CDO or other people to produce.
Yeah, thank you for that. As also as you think through, we'd like to know more how you link up with the value chain higher end, the manufacturers, the spinners, in terms of coordinating this research agenda. Okay. And the kind of cotton probably, the specific kind of cotton our spinners actually require as you're developing these new technologies. Maybe to hear more from Mr. Mturi, because one of the issues around this textile is also one of the things that takes on board the actual product that's coming out from cotton. What has been your take in terms of these transformation aspects? What is your ask to make sure this transformation sticks within the industry?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll speak on behalf of the small-scale producers, because for us we are cottage industry, a cottage that manufactures textiles, a cottage that relies on the spinners, especially specifically fine spinners, to access the raw materials and be able to weave fabrics using handloom processes. This industry is a growing industry, and supported by the manufacturers of yarn, there are a number of cottage industries that are now beginning to emerge that are making textiles from cotton yarn. And some of them are displayed behind there. Now, these textiles have local market, quite a huge local market, and they are beginning to demand an export market. There are few of us who export, like Textile and Texfad, but in small quantities. We are now growing and moving from the small cottage level to a medium level. And currently, like for example of Texfad, we are now beginning to source some equipment to mechanize our processes, to move from the handloom process to a mechanized or semi-mechanized processes of manufacturing textiles. I want to say that this industry should be recognized by government, because government is also putting a lot of funds in skilling under presidential initiative. They're skilling a lot of youths in hand loom processes of manufacturing textiles. But where do they go after that? How can they access these yarns? Some of us are lucky that we are listed under these big industries to be able to access these yarns and then develop our industry. So we need to create a strategy for growing this industry from small scale to medium, and probably we'll also catch up with these big manufacturers, because I believe this is where Uganda should actually start from to grow the textile industry. Let us support the initiatives that are on grassroots and let them grow organically to a level where they catch up with fine spinners and nightingale, and I believe this is possible. I have seen investors who are coming, wanting to put money in this industry, to grow the industry to a level of like fine spinners, to be able to get, okay, for Texfad case, we are now focused on banana fiber. And why are we focusing on banana fiber? It is because of the challenges that we are getting, sometimes accessing these yarns from the industry. We have to place an order in the industry, and the order has to be processed. And by the way, when we place an order of like 100 kilos of yarn, maybe it's a certain color, there are also many hand weavers behind us who are relying on us. So, and you find, should anything go wrong and we are not able to get this yarn in time, then we are also killing those people who are also beginning, to grow the industry. So we started diversifying, because we also believe that there are many other resources that we can explore in this country and get raw materials for textiles and diversify from cotton to other materials. And currently, we are almost getting there. We've done samples of banana fiber fabrics, and we are creating strategy now to begin to manufacture, but still in small scale as we grow organically to a large scale. So if this...
Also, to come on board to get your next page, as you said government to support, there will be the how, the specific how they need to do, because you need to touch into the specificities of that how. Is it in terms of ensuring the production base is boosted? Is it in terms of really typical resources, or the skills? So please...
The skills, for the skills, the government is already supporting. Where I would like the government to come and support are two areas. One area, how can these people who have been trained access some finance, seed financing, to start their small cottage industries, to be able to grow from there and commercialize their skill. The other level is that, can government also help us to negotiate with the manufacturing industry so that a certain percentage of the yarn that they are manufacturing be accessible to the local market, so that this industry can be able to grow and thrive.
Thank you, Mr. Mturi. We shall come back again to these same issues. Going to Alberto. Really, since you're on the board of the Uganda Ginners and Cotton Association, I would like to think that you're more even outward looking, even beyond even exports, and also within the domestic market as a big institution of association. So what has been your take in terms of contribution to this transformation process, and what kind of support do you need to ensure that it sticks?
Yeah, thank you so much, the moderator and the participant here. Yeah, it's a very good question, but first of all, I want to start by giving some few statistics. I'm here presenting farmers, cotton farmers, and ginners as well. I also want to give you statistics, especially Ministry of Finance, that I think since cotton development organizations and cotton subsector has been established in 1994, this sector has contributed about 1.8 trillion Uganda shillings in the rural economy. in the rural economy. This 1.8 trillion shilling went to the cotton farmers. So these statistics at your disposal, you can have it. Last year alone, cotton trading period that ended this year, Uganda Cotton Ginas has been able to pay cotton farmers about 102 billion Uganda shillings. This is the money that went to the cotton farmers in the rural areas. So this speaks a lot and also tell us that as a cotton subsector, we are contributing to the government efforts of eradicating poverty. But here's my questions to the government, especially to the Ministry of Finance. Why has cotton not being considered as one of the oilseed under your program of national oilseed sector? I know through MAIF and Ministry of Finance, cotton, they are supporting national oil development program, but cotton as a crop is not inclusive. Why? And yet, we know the next meal we are going to have must have also been fried using edible oil from cotton. The chicken we are about to eat comes from one of the byproducts from cotton, that is cotton cake. But this has not been. And also the same question goes to our the development partners. Why have they not really considered cotton, supporting cotton, as one of the national oil development projects? As farmers, we are not happy because of that. And yet, then too, what really wanted as farmers, honestly, we want to see research department, especially on the seed. We are facing problem on the hills. So that, as a farmer, the only way we can gain in this sector is how much money do you make per an acre of the land. So that comes from the hills itself. So apparently we are facing a problem. The yields has gone so low. So we really want government, through Ministry of Finance, to support the research institute to make sure that cotton is given a proper attention. We ensure that we are able to increase our yields. The other one is also, I want to also let someone mentioned here that the problem is the PPs, that is public-private partnership. But I think cotton subsector is one of the examples that have developed one of the best public-private partnership with the Cotton Development Organization and Uganda Ginas Cotton Exporters Association. This body has been established in 2009 when governments, to some extent, left the cotton subsector. I'm sorry to mention that. So we came up as a private sector together with the Cotton Development Organization. What do we need to do? Remember, we have got over 300,000 cotton farmers in this country. So that is a number that cannot be neglected. So this body has continued supporting the sector in so many avenues. The inputs, extension, actually we have got the best extension services in this country. I'm not boasting about this. It is facts. But all these are through the private partnership initiative. So now we call government to come to support initiative that we already begun. Why do you want to invent the wheel, yet something already there in place? Come and strengthen these PPs so that we are able to move to the next level. And then, so those are the areas that really we want government to come in support our initiative of supporting the cotton farmers. And in this case, we also want to, my last submission here is that when you look at cotton value chain, I visit India and other countries so much that there's an area that has been left out. It has not been mentioned here. It's the cotton byproduct. In India, farmers are making money in various ends, especially on the cotton byproduct. We know as a farmer, there's what we call cotton stocks. Cotton stock is an avenue that a farmer can add income on top of selling its cotton. But now, as a country, we are grappling with the climate change problem, the charcoal, cutting the trees, but we know research has been done that we can use cotton stock to make a very good briquette for industrial use and domestic use. So this is an opportunity that government has to come in and invest so that farmers can directly benefit from this initiative. So, lastly, once I say that, as we may be given this opportunity, we always get rare chances as farmers to present our interest. Sometimes people who represent us don't really know what we are facing. So when given such opportunities, this question, I still repeat it, we want to know why we have been left out. Otherwise, we call upon government and development partner to come and support cotton oilseed. We put us in the program, National Oilseed Development Program, because it's one area that when you trigger it, you will see the impact. We want to propel from 1.8 trillion Uganda shillings and to make it to 5 billion, and that is what I think government want to do. So we are here to support you in your move to make sure Uganda attain the middle income class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. Actually, the only reason I gave you an extra time, because you are pitching your issues as a farmer. And we needed to hear your story, and I would not like to say that we actually marginalized you on this platform. So thank you for your submission. Minister of Finance has had this. I hope Minister of Agriculture is also here. That actual extension support systems, that's what I took away. And they're actually private-driven, and they're working for you. So we need probably also learn something out of that, as Joseph will answer his question later on, not now. On the issue of why cotton is not being considered in the oil development project. Lastly, over to you, Sylvia, for this panel pitch. What is your transformation need, and what kind of support do you need? That's why government can leverage on you to transform the sector.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Sylvia Owori. I'm probably here in two capacities. One, in the capacity of a fashion designer. I'm probably one of the first fashion designers in Uganda with over an experience of more than 20 years. And then I'm also the director of operations at Operation World Creation. Actually, how I got my job in the operation was because of cotton, because of what I was doing in the industry. I went to meet the chief coordinator of Operation World Creation to help him understand the challenges we were facing as fashion designers, and he told me to go out and research about cotton. And for me today is a very big day that cotton finally has been given a very big platform for us to be able to discuss cotton. We should have a big round of applause for that, because it has been, they've been talking about coffee and bananas and everything, and nothing so on cotton. My questions are actually partly addressed in the book of His Excellency of Musevenomics. I don't know how many of you have read the recent book called Musevenomics. In that book, His Excellency is asking what was the economy like in 1900? What was it then like in 1962? And what is the economy like now? There he will talk about cotton. In the 60s, cotton contributed a lot to the economy of Uganda. It actually, the budget of Uganda was supported mostly by cotton. So my question basically is, what happened to cotton? Because cotton was a household product that everyone all over the country, they produced cotton. It was like the white gold. What happened? Secondly, what happened? Where is our original cotton variety? And for me, that question is to the researchers. What happened to the original variety? Because Uganda's cotton is the second best to Egypt. So when I hear people talking about the variety, the yields, what has happened between in the 1960s? So who's holding the cotton hostage? Where is it? So those are the questions. Before we even talk about cotton, we have to find, we have we have to first find out from the researchers where the cotton is, because we cannot talk about growing the economy and all of 10 value chains that come out of cotton without talking about production. The production of the cotton. I think I don't know if, as Operation Wealth Creation, we've been working closely with some cotton farmers. And these are cooperatives that don't have access to cotton. And most projects, you can go to any place and buy.
Why?
That is the question. That's a question that we are asking. That's why we are here. Let everything come out so that we know what happened basically to that. But we need to go back and start and find out, for us to do the production. We then, under Operation Wealth Creation, we worked with the Cotton Cooperatives Union and identified over 4 million acres of land that was available for production. But there was no specific access basically to cotton. Coffee seedlings, you can go and buy coffee seedlings anywhere. You can go and buy maize anywhere, but you cannot, there is no shop that you can go and purchase cotton. You can only get the cotton from the CDO. So the variety of the cotton that is given to the farmer from the CDO, that is the only variety that basically is available to us and to some farmers. But we have identified a lot of land. For example, in Acholi, we have identified 350,000 acres of land, communal land, where we can go into basically large-scale production. So for us, we are here. As for me, as a fashion person, my challenge is mostly where we had no access to good material, good fabrics. All the fabrics that were available are very expensive. And now many fashion designers are coming out of business because the ministry has put a lot of high taxes on the fabrics. Yet we have a raw material that can transform. Look at how much His Excellency has just announced the second-hand, the ban on the second-hand clothes. But do we have the capacity? This is an opportunity for us now to go in as stakeholders to say, how do we bridge, basically, how do we bridge that gap? And one of the colleagues here talked about the cotton strategy that is there. I think that is one of the best things that has come out of the cotton strategy on textiles. That is a very big, good, comprehensive document, and I would like to commend the team that put that together. So what I can inform them that we've been working closely with NPA and the Ministry of Finance to come up, to start the implementation of that strategy.
Okay.
And they are in the process of that implementation. So we can discuss a little bit of how far, because we have already, National Planning Authority is working on it together with the Ministry of Finance.
Actually, Sylvia, one of the things since you talked into capacities, then I would probably have expected also to throw on the political economy of access to some of these issues that we've actually mentioned. I think Operation Wealth Creation, by design, is supposed to support some of those elements of seed access, issues around better fabric, issues around what farmers are actually facing in terms of access to some of these production inputs. So when I hear yourselves also complaining the same way like a typical farmer Bobby is complaining, then I also get worried that probably then you're singularly doing one element of
no, that's why I had said I was talking within two capacities. My passion starting was the private sector. That's where I started. But now I'm working in two capacities. So, but I will talk also as Operation Wealth Creation now. In what are we doing?
A minute? Yes,
Yes,
let
just
us
1
know.
minute. What basically are we doing to support? First of all, we're looking at all the factors of production, which include, land, which we are identifying a lot of land, labor, which has been discussed here, the skilled labor, capital, that when you go to the parish development model, at least capital, an element of cash has been given to the farmer. At the moment, in the history of Uganda, that right now you have more than 1 trillion shillings down at the parish. That has never happened. So we'd like to commend government for being able to do that, and the Minister of Finance for providing that. The fourth factor of production, which is entrepreneurship. We are coordinating now the private sector and government to help the entrepreneurs, like you see some of the entrepreneurs basically that are here, and also then we are finding and looking for markets. Mm-hmm. Those are the 5 sectors of production, and also helping with the import substitution. So very quickly, I would like to talk a little bit about Operation Wealth Creation.
We shall come to it with time, since we are pressed for time. Mugisha keeps warning me.
Okay.
And I really, this audience also wants to interact with the panel. There are several questions that have also been thrown around. Not only to the panelists, which will come as we get some bit of responses from the audience. And I think going forward, we're going to have the first round of, if this side have 3 questions, this is our demarcation. So any hands that want to contribute? Yes, the first gentleman, second, third, from this side. So I see 3 hands from this side. We're together. So then this side, who's, yes, and, 2, 3, so those 4. So 4 from this side, 3 from this side. So please keep your input. I give 1 minute. If you are not speaking for more than 2 minutes, that means you're not making the point. So that means make the point. Less than a minute, make it, and straight to the person you're addressing it to. Over to Pastor. And Joseph will also come in to fill in later on.
Thank you very much. My name is Chariton Namuoza. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the National Organic Agriculture Movement of Uganda. My question is directed to Dr. Michael, but also to my brother, Richard Mubiru. First of all, we note with concern that Uganda has a lot of strength in terms of promoting the organic industry, and Dr. Michael talked about it. We have, for a very long time, depended on very expensive inputs. In fact, over the last 2 years, we have realized that the value of fertilizers, the cost of fertilizers, has more than doubled in 2 years, mostly occasioned by the Ukraine crisis, as you know it, the supply chain disruptions. Uganda is the #1 country on the African continent with the highest number of certified organic farmers. And this is because of the excellent work from government, plus the private sector and development partners that have invested in promoting organic agriculture. Now, here's the puzzle. We continue talking about competitiveness, but where does Uganda's competitiveness actually lie? With a conducive climate, with all these soils, and by the way, a lot of knowledge at the farmer level. Our farmers are sometimes perceived to be ignorant, but in terms of organic agriculture, for the last couple of years, since time immemorial, our farmers have proved to be very knowledgeable in terms of organic agriculture practices. What you see farmers, practicing is called traditional farming, agriculture, which is 80% close to organic agriculture. Now, what they need is support towards traceability, towards accessing the, organic inputs, which, by the way, are now being manufactured locally here, and they have proved to be very effective and much cheaper. So why are we ignoring this very important aspect of competitiveness that comes from our comparative advantage as a country with the conducive climate and the soils, and now the knowledge that we have here. Uganda, lastly, Uganda is home to some of the most excellent innovations. The team at Makerere, there's a research team at Makerere that innovated a tool for testing whether the product is organic or not organic. With all these food safety issues that we have, it's called Kebera, and it can test whether, let's say, the cotton is organic or not. And this is happening here in Uganda, and many other things that I would have wished to share, but because of time, I'll stop at that.
Thank
Shariton
you.
Namwoza, Chief Executive Nogamu, please get in touch with me. We can have a dialogue on cotton, organic cotton, and many other things relating to the industry. Thank you.
Thank you for that advert. The second hand, this gentleman. This table, then the other table. The question is clear, Richard and Dr. Michael.
Thank you very much. My name is Sam Kanakulia Ruvinga, and we are not recognized, but I'm representing the Uganda Cotton Oil Producers Association, Processors Association. And the proceedings have been focusing on the lint and clothes and apparel, but we are representing the oil processors, which also represents the cotton cake. Bob has mentioned it, and I also thank Michael for their contribution, but I'm just going to be very specific on the things we need. One is the support in the modernization for efficiency of our equipment, that we can put it further, how the intervention can be supported to be efficient, our equipment in terms of motors and electricity saving and the processes. Two, investments in support of the farmer in the chain. Indeed, Doctor, you've mentioned it here. We are talking about sustainability, support in the soil management of our farmers, the quality of seed. Of recent, there has been depletion of the content and the quality of soils. We need support through NARO to get specific budgets to look at the soil management for the farmers to maintain the quality and the levels of production, because our quality of seeds will depend on the quality of the content of the soil and the matters.
Thank you.
Thirdly, for the research, we deliberately want focus on the protein content research, where funds should be available through NARO to specifically improve the quality of protein content for the benefit of the animal sector through the cotton cake. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that input, Sam. I think that's very clear in terms of some of the issues we need as inputs for transformation. And the last person on this side, then we go to the other four, because I'd requested 4 hands. I'll come back to you probably later, because
I'm called Gongre Bruno from Uganda Oilseed Producers and Processors Association. It came out here that the spinning is a problem. I just got up here to say it now. We had the biggest spinning mill in Uganda, which could consume cotton and spin it within a shortest time. I don't remember the capacity, but by then production of cotton in Uganda was maximum, and this spinning mill was working. This spinning mill is still there. the machineries in the spinning mill is still there. This spinning mill is placed within the railways. The road connections, the railway connection is okay. Why are we reinventing the wheel? Why don't we? It's just a suggestion. Try to look into how to revitalize this spinning mill so that the spinning we are talking of having a problem is not a problem. Then secondly, which is the last, the system of marketing, production and marketing of cotton. For those who are of my age, I think you know, the farmers were being supported. Then they were where they could take that, they call it a society. From a society, they take it to the GINA. And the government was very much involved. And this is what I'm saying. Why don't we make sure that the farmers are interested in the production of cotton by streamlining the marketing and then the production? Okay. I think that's what I wanted to put across.
Thank you, Bob. I think it's very clear, and our colleague here, Richard, is going to respond to as part of government.
Yes,
Why?
Doctor, we only have 10 minutes, so
Yes.
whoever is asking and the
Please
replies. Yes.
keep it short. Even 30 seconds will be good. I'll
Just
stop you for stories.
Robert Odeke, Uganda Cotton Cooperative Union. Just asking if cooperatives can cooperate with the GINAs, or the GINAs work hand in hand with the cooperative unions, because Uganda Cotton Cooperative Union is bringing together about 15 district cooperative unions. So that to just reinforce what my brother Agong has said and what Sylvia shared and what Bob shared, that we can boost production. Because at one time we had about 1 million metric tons.
I think the point is there clear. How can we do the cooperation between
that
the
cooperation, and even the rest were mentioned, seeds, because we do not have access to cotton seeds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert. We had the lady, then the gentleman. She's here. Please, no stories.
Thank you so much, Dr. Medina. One of the transformation factors that I want to put on the table is ring-fencing funding for cotton research. And this I want to ask the Ministry of Finance. We need to ring-fence funds for cotton research. The next point is training or skilling along the value chain. All those players need skilled workers, and some of them even have to hire experts, which increases the cost of production. So the issue of training needs to be emphasized. And finally, I want to inform everybody that the provision of cotton planting seed is the mandate of Cotton Development Organization. And we both have the capacity, the skills, and the will to provide seed to everybody. And this we do year in, year out. We have enough seed every year to provide to everybody. So I just appeal that whoever needs the seed, please come and work with us. Thank you.
Sorry, you didn't introduce yourself.
Damali Rwama from Cotton Development Organization.
I think, Sylvia, you heard. There is enough seed for 300-something thousand acres. We probably have not approached the right person. Then the other gentleman behind.
Philip Sechipi, the National Chairman of Uganda Tailors Association. My submission goes to Minister of Finance that they should emphasize on research in the tailoring industry, because they don't have the database for the tailors across the country, and even if there is the industries, the tailors are key in this sector. Another reference is in Singapore, 1962. Remember, in the time of independence, Singapore was very poor country rather than Uganda, but now when they entered into textiles, they are very far, many times, maybe like 5 or 6 times. Dubai also entered into textiles. By that time, they started now engaging many people in textiles. So I also appeal to Minister of Finance to go into research, thorough research in textiles, so that we can develop the industry. And I thank Mr. Mviru because you say this is the sector where they should invest a lot in research and other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. I think research for finance might be far-fetched, but we have Dr. Michael here to tell us what they do in supporting the research development process. I'm exonerating Joseph on that issue of research because his issue is to give money where they've requested to do research. Our last question this side.
Thank you, Madam. And greetings to all the person here in this 14th National Competitive Forum. I am representing Iki Cotton Ginnery, and I am proud grandson of a farmer who was a cotton farmer and a small-time textile merchant in his time. I don't have any suggestion. I just want to have a courage to say that yes, I'm in farming profession and I am a son of farmer and I want to become a successful commercial farmer. This urge should go into the nerve of the youth of Uganda and the youth of East African community. This is the only thing I want through this forum and esteemed people here around, that this message, if we imbibe through you, Madam, from the fashion industry, fashion and farmer should go together. This is what I wanted to say.
Thank you. I would request for anyone who has any more questions, please write them and give them to me. I'll read them. Because really, the panel, we have just more 10 last minutes for them to make their rejoinders. And I'll request if I can read them all, then they'll flash them. And now I'm going to request Joseph, before the panel comes in, you've got some questions, but I exonerated you on research. But maybe you can say how much money you want to give necessary to do this. So over to you, Joseph.
Thank you very much. The questions are very pertinent. The engagement is very animated, which is good. We are doing a very serious note-taking, but let me just shed some light. To those of you who have recognized the interventions by the government, which are helping towards where we want to go, that's appreciated. Skilling, but then you're saying these people need capital to put these skills to work. And I think we have a solution in that direction in the making, especially if they are women. You are aware that with support from the World Bank, we've made available $218 million under the GROW project. And so if these ladies or women can be helped to formalize, and we have a BDS service to that end also. So we think that we can construct something around there to take that forward. Similarly, there's been a lot of discussion about financing. Patient capital, concessional financing. When the minister was reading the budget speech for this running financial year, he made mention of a project we are processing to operationalization now, the Investment for Industrial Transformation and Employment project. We are looking into manufacturing and export sectors. And we think that we'll be able to deploy capital in the range of even 10 to 15 years at concessional rates in the margins of maybe 10 or so %. But this must be based really on feasibility studies. And as you are talking about the good old days of Lira spinning mill, the question that rings in my mind, in 1962, when we got independence, we had a population of about 7.2 million people. Today, we are talking 46 million people. Average land holding in Uganda is about 2 acres per household. And of course, we've liberalized this space. The return on investment for cotton for a farmer. Remember that farmers are rational economic agents. And so if I'm to put my money on cotton vis-a-vis another commodity, the numbers must add up to make those decisions. And so I think for me that's a discussion we want to have. Sylvia, you talked about land being available. Such land, we need to work with anchor investors. Who are the anchor investors that we can, have as a mobilization point around which to work with the small outgrowers? That is the puzzle we are trying to unlock. There is a study currently ongoing, a feasibility study for a spinning mill, and we await the outcome of it before we can be conclusive on that point. Now, a lot has been said on R&D.
Why has cotton not been considered?
Yeah, I'm coming to that, Madina. On R&D, I would like to confirm to you that government's commitment on R&D is on an upward trend. We had about 300 billion shillings in the budget, but through the wisdom of His Excellency, he has decided that we need to up that game, and we have a directive to double it under the STI desk. But also the idea that this research should be informed by a competitive approach to its financing. It is not just accessing research grants on account of, having pet subjects, but things which are speaking to the market. Why is cotton not among the commodities under the National Oil Project? As you are aware, the National Oil Project is a successor project to the Vegetable Oil Development Project. And it is continuing with the commodities which were picked up under the VODP. So that is the simple answer. The more difficult answer would be, for each of these commodities, you have to do market studies, proper feasibility studies. And of course, unless some of these commodities can be done purely through public sector support, others require that you have a partnership with the private sector. The reason we are successful, for example, with palm oil, there is an anchor investor that has really made this dynamic possible. The reason we are also successful with what do we call it? Sunflower, is we have anchor investors in that space. So the issue is having a conversation about sourcing and negotiating with anchor investors that can make some of these value chains feasible, and then we can decide on what risk the public sector should take or what contribution the public sector should take in that respect. So I think that's my preliminary response. I know we have a later session in the afternoon where we can delve in detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I gave him time because government always gets questions, especially Minister of Finance. People want to pin you and they need these answers. So thank you, Joseph, for your response. Back to the panel. Each give some feedback from the questions you received. If it's not clear, I'll read it for you. But from Richard, at least 2 minutes each. And as also in that process, you give your final pitch, since we don't need to come back to this.
Thank you very much. Mine was from Nogam. Why actually ignore the organic success story, yet we have competitive advantage? I think the straight answer is that nobody is ignoring this. And I think the right space where we seem to see very good traction in the CTA value chain would be in the segment of the SMEs to start with, because at that level I can see good traction in terms of even managing process, so that our running of conventional manufacturing, which involves actually chemicals, does not undermine it. That is one. The second has already been, I think, answered partly by Joseph. The issue of Lira spinning mill. Yes, I have the opportunity of visiting Lira spinning mill during my days on the board of Cotton Development Organization. And of course, I have the advantage of knowing the technology available in the spinning space. The truth of the matter is that you cannot revive Lira spinning mill given the technology that is there and given the migration of technology that has taken place since the 60s. The conversation around what can be done is what I think Joseph is best suited to answer eventually. Lastly, Dr. Medina and the audience is basically to speak to what next after this conversation. Where I speak from perspective of WUMA, the sector where I have my brother next to me, would be to sustain a structured strategic conversation with the players. I like it when you speak to success stories around whom you can build a value chain and so on. And I think this has worked for Sunflower. It should be able to work even for the CTA. And the key for this, and the entry point would be, how do we resolve the issue of sourcing, closing capacity for Uganda? And for me, the straight message is there is good capacity, because each one of us who are parents have never imported any ready-made uniform. We have 10 million plus children in school. They can close regularly. We have never felt a scarcity. Can we build around what Mr. Sechimpi was doing together with the value chain players? And I think we can take the conversation beyond this. I thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Over to you, Bede. And I gave you another question from the audience. If you can tackle it, will be
right. So one thing which, so this question is surrounding how, which is I think the point of the entire panel, is how can we engage more women and youth in this value chain? At the farmer angle, there are women present, but one thing that is worth noting in the garmenting side of the entire equation, purely by biology, thinner fingers, most of the people who are working in garmenting are female. So this sector has been the backbone of development across most countries, but for gender equality, it's also massive because it provides a secondary income for households as women are getting a job in the garmenting side. In terms of youth, of course, this sector appeals to youth because the workforce can't be an aged workforce. You're going to struggle to hold your own in a textile mill. So that's on that. I think if I was just going to conclude, first of all, I'd like to appreciate the Ministry of Finance for the interventions that they have done. The electricity subsidy is important and critical for spinning to operate. The support on the cotton buffer fund is amazing. And, the dialogue that we have with the Ministry, we appreciate it entirely. I would say the main three take-homes for me is we need to respect the four-band structure of the CET. If we're going to develop the textile value chain, we cannot allow fabric in duty-free to be dumped in the domestic market unless our direction is we want to become a garmenting nation, which we need to be guided on. That's number one. Number two is we need competitively priced cotton, which I think the ministry is also addressing. And finally, in terms of the financing, which you've also addressed, I think that's a very important thing, the long duration, concessionary, developmental funding for the sector. So those would be my main three requests and take-homes from this session.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Mturi, you need to speak also to the issues as a cottage industry. Which kind of interventions should even the next budget really put in place for you to feel that you're part of it and the game changers in this space?
Oh, yes. I did say one crucial point that we need government to recognize that there is existence of a cottage industry that manufactures textiles, and it has an impact, or it can create an impact if supported. So I would wish that there is a forum to reach these hand weavers. And I said I represent them. We formed an association, and I'm the current chairman of the association. So if we could link with government agencies that would support these cottage industries, would be good, to create an environment where they can have access to raw materials, and they can also be able to access other technologies to move from the cottage level to probably semi-mechanized levels. But there are also quite a number of innovations within this sector that are happening. These hand weavers are continuously creating new products in textiles, and these new products may not be having so much impact within the local market here because, first of all, it needs some science behind it, because most of the hand weavers are actually not textile scientists. They're just designers. So they also need some support in terms of access to scientific processes which can certify their products. And they are also finding a challenge when they come to export their products, because sometimes they are asked to provide certification certificates, and there are no standards, I think, locally under UNBS that can certify some of these textiles that are produced by the hand weavers in the local cottage industry.
Thank you, Mr. Mturi. Then over to you, Doctor. You have several aspects that you need to, but still keep it 1 minute and a takeaway for the bid for the next budget to see if where R&D can come and support cotton.
Yeah, thank you so much, moderator. There are quite a number of issues that I will have talked about, but definitely, yes, the organic materials my colleague was talking about, it is one of the things that we are looking at. We have a very good lab for really producing biopesticides. What we are currently lacking is the resource to continue with the research. Research is a very expensive venture. It is not cheap. If you don't invest, you are not going to get anything. And indeed, we should really be talking among ourselves, the private sectors, and all the people available, and see how we can really support research. Because the end product is what we are going to see out. Otherwise, without that, it will not work. But we are on that, and we are going to continue working on the biorationals. The oils, we are working on the oils, especially in terms of the quality and the quantity. We are producing those varieties that have higher content of oil and also the good quality in terms of the ingredients in the oil themselves. The protein cake, we're also working on that. And again, I will emphasize, we really need resources to continue doing that. Usually we have quite a number of materials, and we have to make sure, we have all these materials go through the lab for analysis, and they're quite expensive. So that is what we are really trying to do with that, and we are trying to make sure things work. Another aspect that I need to mention is really, if we are going to continue with the production and enhance production, we really need to start thinking of mechanizing production. Otherwise, the hand ore and some of what we are doing now may not seriously help us so much. In research, what we are looking at is ideotypes that can be mechanized in terms of harvesting, in terms of planting, in terms of all that, so that that's what we can use. Most developed countries are now, have mechanized, cotton production, harvesting and all that, because of just, working on the architecture of the crop to fit mechanization. So I think it is something we need to be looking at. I will have talked more about, the cotton in the past, how it was, as was mentioned here. Yes, cotton came in Uganda a long time ago, in 1903, when we had cotton, and with the time, cotton was somehow divided into two. that research was being carried out in two places. One place was in Namlonge here. That was specifically looking at what they were calling Bocalasa pedigree alba, which has fine texture and medium fiber length, more good for spinning and for apparels. That was happening here. And most of the people, it was divided in such a way that the central and the western were mostly growing the BPA. The east, the north, and the northwest was growing what we call Satu, that is Serere, Alba type Uganda. These are slightly short length fibers, a bit coarse, mostly targeting the pharmaceuticals for the cotton wool. And that was what was happening. And somehow it also reduced on the mixing of the seeds, because there was no way you could carry seeds to go and gene from the west, the central, up in the east or the north, because these were two different varieties. But currently we are having that problem of, gening being done across, and at times you get varieties being mixed up. So at times you get the short fiber length varieties being mixed with the long one, the medium one, which is a problem, which we are working on seriously with the Cotton Development Organization to make sure we come back to the system where seeds are not mixed or taken across. Otherwise, thank you so much. We really wish to continue with this conversation and to really see how best cotton can be helped. For a long time, by the way, cotton has not been in the limelight. We don't get a lot of money for research, very little money, yet we have a lot to do. I'm happy that it is coming out now, and Minister of Finance is here listening. Hopefully, the coming financial year will get some good resources that can help us carry out research on cotton. Thank you.
No, thank you, Doctor. Bob, and one of the issues that came out even from Flo is how do we involve the more common cotton farmers in production of cotton to sustain the value chain? Since you're the representative, what more can we do to make sure they are more on board for sustainability?
Yeah, thank you so much. How we can bring in the cotton farmers in this value chain is that already I mentioned about over 300,000 farmers in cotton. So to double these statistics, the only thing we need to do, one is we need to see that the yields increases. That's where the farmers make business in cotton. Two, we also want to see that this other value chain that has been discussed here, we want to see more investment in that. Because any value added in cotton, that is a price added to the farm gate, to the farmers. So if all this can be worked on, definitely we'll see more farmers joining cotton. So in my concluding remarks, when the PSST read in his speech, he mentioned somewhere that in this discussion we needed more local and practical solutions. So in this context that of being local and practical, for you to be local, you get a local solution, you must also be local. Sometimes we have this problem in this country. We are not local. That's why we fail to get the local solution to our problems. Being practical, we must be practitioners. So these are where the policy gap is. Being practitioners, sometimes the practitioners are not involved in policy formulations. But I'm happy that it is now, the trend is changing, which is very positive. Now, Minister of Finance, I still say that the answer you gave about cotton not being included in National Oilseed Development Program, I think it is something that you need to have a forum with us. You don't need a research here. You don't need feasibility study here. What government needs is change, mindset change. That is all. Because we know how it's going to work. So if you can give us more forum outside this, we shall tell you why we are requesting for this. And we are called. Then lastly, on the public-private partnership, I also want to mention this, that cotton, we are so organized that even the farmer before planting knows the price. Tell me in this country whether there's any commodity that the farmer knows the price before planting. It is cotton. As I speak now, we know cotton is some 2 months to come. Now we have the price for the cotton. That is something that really we need to take as an example in other commodities. So, and this came as a result of the working together with the government and the private sector. That's Uganda Junior Cotton Exporters Association. So that's why we call that you need to come and know what we are doing, and then we can work together. We are already steps ahead. We only need you to come and we see where the gaps are and we continue moving on that. Thank you so much for giving us opportunity. My brother from Uganda Cotton, I come from the cooperative unions. So in this case, there are about 3 functional cooperative unions that are a member of Uganda Junior Cotton Exporter Associations, and we are working together. So my brother, with issue of the seed, that's not an issue because this membership is open, the door is open, you come and join, you access all the services that you need in cotton subsector. We as the cooperative union working, we are accessing those services without any problem.
Thank you.
So you're most welcome.
Thank you. Lastly, Sylvia, as we conclude on this panel, where PSFU is, even the next session, the role of you connecting with your members. We need to hear you talking about how you're connecting your members, especially even around R&D, because these are your members as private sector foundation. We need to see your voices, and you're part of the forum. Yes, Sylvia, please 1 minute, because
thank you very much. I would like to commend the Ministry of Finance for organizing again this forum. But what I would like to say is that what is the plan now moving forward? Now that Ministry of Finance has understood there are so many stakeholders, how do you continue now to put them all together so that we can work together, given the fact that cotton is the only crop that has 10 value chains, so you can have 10 different industry. So if we're talking about agro-industry, it's cotton is one that you should actually grab, because it will give you 10, almost more than 10 different factories. So our prayer is to see how do you now coordinate us, Ministry of Finance, coordinate all the players and take a lead and understand this. Because in reality, there are 3 very important things that a human needs. And one is food, housing, and the third is clothing. So before you're even talking about coffee, you should talk about cotton. Cotton will bring in more revenue than coffee. So I'm glad that this conversation has started, and it has started at a very high level. I think we also mentioned something to do. This is so big in a way that can the policymakers think about having a ministry of textile? This is just a food for thought. Can there be a ministry of textiles? Because all the 40 and above million Ugandans every day eat, and every day have to put on something. Every baby that is born, I don't know how many are born every day, they have to be clothed. So my prayer to the policymakers at the Ministry of Finance, as OWC, we will be here to coordinate and work basically with all the players in the industry. I thank you.
People are pitching for their next phases of funding. Ministry of Finance, you hear, they are really willing to coordinate the issue. Sylvia talked about coffee is not that important. If coffee people are here, they'll be lynching you right now in terms of the...
No, I didn't say it's not that important. I was saying the time that has been given and the money that has been put in the coffee, they should use that same drive to be put in cotton.
Thank you, Sylvia. Just now, as we conclude the panel, I'm reading out the questions for noting, but
yes.
we shall not respond to them.
Yes, Doctor, very quickly.
Is there a chance for organic cotton in Uganda? The international buyers always want products made out of cotton, organic cotton. And then there's the other question on, are there opportunities for students to engage in research or projects that bridge technology and agriculture, particularly in the cotton industry? Then there is the issue of rain-fed agriculture regarding cotton is so incentivizing to farmers, disincentivizing. Do we need affirmative action, and by who? That's from Professor Frederick Myode from Makerere. And then lastly, how best can we make some alternatives and suggestions on building capacity in terms of ensuring standards and I'm happy to announce the ED of UNBS is around. So we are going to tackle the next aspects of standards, even fishing, that when we conclude, he has to give us the aspect on how they're addressing to ensure that the export market around standards is actually met. So we welcome the ED of UNBS in the House on the issue of standards that will be addressed even in the next panel. So a round of applause to our panel. And,
thank you very much, Doctor. And I will request that Joseph comes and gives our panelists a small token. Please note it's not cash for those of you who are recording in their organizations. It's just a small token from the ministry to thank the panelists. Dr. Medina, yours will come after the second panel, since you're still handling the second panel. So, Doctor, you're allowed to go and pick some tea as you come. Joseph, please. We may stand now and receive, and then we'll have a picture, all of us together, with Dr. Medina. So, Doctor, I'm only giving you 5 minutes to pick tea, coffee. I'm going to introduce your next panel and welcome them. So by the time you come back, Doctor, they'll be seated, they'll be waiting for you. So that I buy you 2 minutes, 3 minutes of coffee. If you haven't picked coffee or tea and something very quickly, it's still available for the next 10 minutes, and I close the serving area to prepare for lunch. So you can quickly grab a cup of coffee or tea if you hadn't. But the back benchers, all of them had coffee and tea. So don't think that we left them out. They are sorted, especially the people at the back. The moment the buffet came, they sorted themselves. All right. So Joseph, now you'll have a photo with our panelists. You can, in the middle, Joseph, there, please. We can move forward. So we are at the back. So move forward. Cameraman, there you go. So a few of us can be at the front and the other, so that we can feel there. Ensure everyone appears in this photo. It's going to be on the Ministry of Finance calendar. So I would suggest you smile, because for one whole year you'll be hanging in someone's house, an office space. But thank you very much, members of the panel, the cotton team, the Jennas.
UBC, inspiring Uganda. Pick of the day on UBC.